good. Shout out all y'all. What's up? What's up?
I went live like 3 times at the same time yesterday on Rockfin. Something was going on.
Hey Franco,
Yo.
you live on the MCSC network too?
I forgot to do that. I just came back home. But yeah, that would have been dope. I mean, I can add the clips though, and I can add the download like of this whole thing, and we can premiere it for that crowd.
Once I'm still gassed about that. That's why that's why I'm embellishing that fact. Live.
I'm sharing it right now.
I'll retweet it when you send it out.
Ali, Alexandra, and fuck typo. There we go.
Independent Left News is in the stream.
Oh, for real? What's up, man? What's up,
So
Independent News?
good.
Yeah,
I'll be right back. Sorry, 1 second.
no
You
problem.
know what? I'm glad because that gives me time to put this shit in the Discord too.
Okay, well that's someone's doing it. I just once it's
Oh,
live,
thank
I
you.
just stare at the screen.
Oh nah.
I'm still tagging you guys. My computer's
Put that in
slow.
Slow News Day Discord. Put that in our special Discord.
I'm so paranoid that internet.
Alrighty. Oh, let me put it in Slow News Day Element too, as long as they're blowing up my phone.
No, I haven't. Is that?
There.
Oh shit, Fuzz the
Oh,
Fair is
let me go
here.
retweet. Man, if I miss y'all's tweets, I apologize. It's hashtag We Are All Assange Tweet Storm Day, so notifications are a bit messy. But yeah.
Oh, they can't hear you guys. Dang, they didn't hear all the stuff you were just saying. I'll be back. I can fix that.
Well, shit.
I'm live here.
Audio. Yeah. I see my output thing moving.
I'm gonna have to find it later, right? So yeah. How are you, Jackson?
I am doing well. Today's just been a weird day. It's like this weird today. So I've had random time where I'm just trying to fill the gap. But overall, good.
All right, they can hear you guys now.
Oh, for real? Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Okay, good. I had Sleepy J telling us the same thing. Thanks, Sleepy.
Yeah, thanks, Sleepy J. Yeah, I was just connected to my to set up to my headphones, but I didn't have my headphones attached.
Ah.
All right, you guys ready?
Oh,
Yes.
hey. Who's that? Who's that in the chat? Who's Slow News Day? Who's that?
What's up, man?
Who that is?
All right, welcome everybody to Frank Analysis. I'm your host, Franco. I'm joined today by a lovely cast of people here. I'm joined today by a fellow member of the MCSC Network, Glory Jones, Ali Alexandra of the Chicago Corner, and Jackson Hinkle from The Dive with Jackson Hinkle. What's up, guys? Let's go and introduce ourselves, starting with Glory. How are you doing?
Hey, Franco. I'm Glory. I'm co-host of a lovely program called Slow News Day with Steve Poikin and then Base God Tech Ninja, Josh. And I am a new member of Mikasa Sukasa Network. So really gassed about that. And yeah, activists on the ground. And we're going to be in DC March 17th and March 18th. That's where my activism will be, at least next week, because tomorrow it's going to be all over the place. But I'll get to that.
Ali Alexandra's also here. How are you doing, Ali?
Good. How are you? How's everybody
Pretty
doing?
good.
Good. Good to be here. Yep. I run Chicago Corner, and some exciting additions are coming. Changes, additions. I'm not going to say anything yet because I just feel like it. But yeah, I'm in Chicago, and I do a lot of writing as well. And some of you have probably seen some of my articles. I've got a new one coming up pretty soon. Probably should be out next week. So it's good to be here. Thanks for having me.
And last but not least, we have Jackson Hinkle. What's up, bro? What's up, man? How you doing?
I'm doing good. Thank you for having me on again. And yeah, I am the host of The Dive, and I'm stoked to be here with all of you, with Ali, Glory, and you, Franco. And how you doing?
I'm doing pretty well, other than the fact that I'm a little mad that you got your video demonetized recently. So you want to open up with that a little bit? What happened there?
Yeah, like to be honest with you, it's not like a huge deal compared to what some people have been going through with getting like their entire accounts demonetized or taken off YouTube. But I've actually had, so last night I had I think there was like 3 videos I had that got demonetized by YouTube. And one of them was about like Biden bombing Syria. So you can't talk about that apparently. They said that was a hateful video. And they also said it was discussing like war, so you can't talk about war. And I had a video in which Biden was like forgetting the name of his Secretary of Defense, and I was like kind of just pointing out the fact that the guy leading the single largest, most powerful country on the globe is, I mean, his brain's melting before our very eyes. And I was talking about that. They said that was hateful content as well. So, you know, getting demonetized left and right. You are very familiar with that, and they're coming after all of us. So it's just disappointing to see it playing out in real time.
And if they're coming after all of us, we're all going to have each other's back. We're all going to be fighting for each other. There's an event happening next week in DC called Fuck Censorship, the protest. And there's also the Assange protest that's happening simultaneously from March 17th to March 18th. So we'll give some more details on that at the end. Glory here will tell us more about that. She was on Richard Medhurst's show yesterday, giving that audience details on that. But speaking of censorship and speaking about all these other issues, that with the root problem comes from, you know, money in politics and a government that doesn't represent the people. We know we have to change the system so that it can actually represent us. You know, and there's people out there that they prioritize on electoral politics, or they say that it's important. There's other people that say we should prioritize more on activism. So we're going to get into that discussion. We're going to talk about how much should we prioritize. I'm of the stance that we should prioritize more on activism. I used to believe in prioritizing in both. There's other commentators that believe in that we should be prioritizing in both, but to what degree? I'm interested to hear what some agreements, what disagreements are here. But let's begin with you, Glory. What is your stance? Should we prioritize on both, and to what degree, or should we only be prioritizing on one?
This is something that Steve has said many, many times, but before we even start to get into politics, we need to address the glaring problem that is the national security state. That is the fact that our politicians don't serve us whatsoever. They're mainly here to serve as a branch of the World Economic Forum. Like, basically, you guys mentioned it at the start of the stream. They're coming for all of us because that's their plan. This era we're about to enter is going to be the era of gatekeeping. So they don't want any people like us to get into politics, and they won't let us get into politics. There's so much infrastructure designed to make sure that doesn't happen via our elections, which are privately owned, by the way. ES&S is a private company. They own most election machines. And then you also have companies like Periscript, which own the voter verification software. it's all privately owned by people from Silicon Valley, people like Microsoft, and they have their own partisan interests. And that is to not let any truly on the ground people get in. And if they do, then right away they get co-opted. Like, so in my mind, if you want to get into electoral politics at a local level, I won't necessarily hate you for it, but it's not the end all be all. And at the end of the day, it shouldn't cloud your ability to get into real activism, because what we have to do is we have to pour more effort into mutual aid groups, into addressing the growing problem of the national security state, into enriching our own communities to the point where they'll actually be able to stand up to the growing technocratic panopticon and the growing agenda of the Great Reset, because otherwise, if we keep prioritizing on politics and putting our faith in politicians, it's not going to help us whatsoever. So we need to really address this in a way that comes from the ground up and just with mass numbers, public pressure, organizing through mutual aid, any of that, really occupying spaces of the national security state, occupying big tech, your sheriff stations, wherever the fuck Palantir is in Texas, go occupy those areas and show them what's up, because we need a post-partisan movement, especially, or else we'll never get the numbers if we keep playing team politics, sports, or all of this bullcrap. We're never going to get the numbers otherwise.
So there, you brought up two important things there, and I want people to understand what these things are. So you brought up the World Economic Forum, and you brought up the Great Reset. So what exactly are those, and how are those two related?
Well, the Great Reset is exactly what it sounds like. Well, it's not necessarily a reset. It's just a further consolidation of all the power that the elites, that the predator class currently has, back into their hands again, but in a way that makes it feel like you're involved, because that's the purpose of stakeholder capitalism, which is spearheaded by World Economic Forum founder Klaus Schwab, who's written extensively about this idea of stakeholder capitalism, wherein there's an increasing public-private partnership fascism. But it merely just feels like you're involved because they involve the most co-opted of co-opted civil society groups in it. Like, they involve groups like Black Lives Matter and Sunrise, which at a national leadership level, Black Lives Matter, they're being asked by Ferguson organizers for $20 million because they raised $90 million and did not put 1 cent of it back into the organizers that helped grow that movement. Sunrise took $650K from a George Soros PAC. Like, they are co-opted at the national level, and they are being used to help spearhead the Great Reset. Klaus Schwab has said it himself. He looks to youth activism to be the catalyst for it. So it's like, because of the involvement of these organizations, there's going to be this feeling that we're more involved in the decision-making process, because corporate boards are going to have one woman of color. It's going to feel more inclusive, but in reality, it's going to be a transhumanist fantasy. Klaus Schwab has written extensively about how he wants to the internet of our mind, how he wants to connect people further to technology, our bodies to technology. He's talked about literally having chips in cattle so we know what their conditions currently are and what their health currently is. There's just so many draconian conditions and weird transhumanist fantasies and biotechnology visions that this dude has, that he sees as the end vision for this great reset, this great fascist reset, which really just increases the crackdown on all of us, because how they're going to do it is everyone who criticizes it is going to get called QAnon, like Slow News Day. And
yeah, they're already putting tags on your videos. Yeah, careful, Glory. You got Klaus Schwab in the chat right now. He's like, stop snitching.
Oh, damn word. Hey, Klaus Schwab, you a little bitch.
Yeah, well, you know, there's that. I don't see any politicians talking about this stuff. So, I mean, it's going to be up to truth tellers like us who are online that are going to discuss this with the people. But Allie, do you have anything else to bounce off of what Glory just said?
Well, that's a tough act. I mean, she covered all the bases. It's a tough act to follow. And you said that I'll go with this first. I definitely don't believe that elections should be the focus anymore, but I'll get to why. You said that politicians don't really talk about it much, and that's kind of true. They don't, not with us, but they talk about it with world leaders. I was watching a video of Joe Biden yesterday, and I can post it in the chat. And it was from 2016 at Davos, and which is like a global forum where they just make decisions about how it's going to go in the corporations, how things will be run in the government, and effectively exactly what Gloria was talking about. So Klaus Schwab, who's again here in the chat, so shout out to Klaus. He wrote a book called The Fourth Industrial Revolution, and that's what Joe Biden was talking about at this forum in 2016. Now, granted, he was far more clear. He wasn't so, far beyond with his mental capacity at the time. So he was speaking very clearly. And he was talking about how the fourth industrial revolution, which would be pretty much implemented in a sense by some kind of crisis, whichever crisis you want to think it is. And it would essentially change how the world works as far as AI and technology. And something that I really found disturbing is the fact that every one of those people in that room, they know that what's coming is going to put a lot of people out of work because of the automation that's ahead. So no, those politicians aren't talking about it with us. They're talking about it with each other and other global leaders. So, I don't really have any respect for them as far as, they're pleased for why they're going to change this time. I might sound cynical, but why should I believe that they have any intention of really effectively changing anything when time after time after time after time, they take advantage of people's hardships, their struggles, and they use their emotions to get people to act. In the same sense, though, a politician is going to be a politician. And if they're not your savior, they're not your gods. Like, we have to be our own heroes. A politician's not going to do it for us. And, I've been guilty of this too. I thought Obama was the greatest thing ever when I first voted for him when I was 18. And it was really disappointing to find out that he was a fucking drone king. And after that was like in 2011. After that, I was like, screw this. So, I've gone it's been a long time I've felt like this, but I haven't seen the level of just complete, it's all just a farce, and it's all kind of coming undone, especially with like what's going on in Washington. The illusions are breaking away. So do I think that ultimately one day elections maybe will work? Sure, but not right now. Not until you educate people on a massive scale about what's really going on. And that's a vague statement to make, but I can't answer all that either. But I think knowledge is power. And so that's how I feel, at least for me, I can implement activism, is giving more people information. And that's what we owe really all of our viewers, is to give them information that's, you don't have to make all these bombastic stories. A lot of the times you can just show them the website of something. Go to the World Economic Forum. They'll tell you right there. That's what's crazy about it. So, again, like, you might ask, how does this really relate to electoral politics? But I promise you, it has everything to do with it. So I'm going to go with focus on activism first and then elections later.
So Jackson, we talked about this a little bit the last time you were here, and I think you were saying that activism is important, and that you were looking forward to talking about this more on like a more focused topic on this issue. So you want to elaborate a little bit more on what your position was on this?
Yeah, I think I'm pretty much. I mean, I would say I'm pretty much in line with both Allie and Gloria. I mean, like, I think local politics should definitely be something that shouldn't be seen as a waste of time. I think there is the potential for real grassroots change to take place on a local level. But even when you do break down those barriers and you get people elected on the local level that are supposed to represent you, for example, we had Nithya Raman in Los Angeles that was just elected to, I think she was CD13 in Los Angeles, and she was, lauded as like a progressive, a socialistic champion, not actually a socialist, but, another one of those who's actually more of like a social democrat that calls themselves a socialist. First week on the job, she votes to approve funding for more cops in schools. So, and she ran on like an explicitly like anti-cop message. And then the first week does that. And, you know, she was grilled after doing that, grilled by Angelenos like across the entire city for doing that and taking that vote. And she came out and apologized, but it's like, you fucking voted for it. You already did it. You can't go back on your vote. Like, this already happened. Now, there's obviously exceptions in which we can point to, I think, on the local level in U.S. politics where we have had victories. I think there's people who haven't necessarily sold us out and who have been fighting for us. Kshama Sawant in Seattle, I think, is a perfect example of someone who has at least stayed true to their vision and what they've been fighting for. Maybe not as left as many of us would want an elected to be if we had like our ideal candidate or our ideal like politician in office. But by and large, she's, I think, someone who has, you know, proven that she can campaign on a generally leftist message, as well as continue to fight and apply pressure on that, you know, on that ideology when she was elected. And I think that's a dub. I think that's something we could point to as something that shouldn't be, you know, discredited or frowned upon for participating in. But as far as national politics go, I mean, I think you guys summed it up quite well as to why it's such a pointless endeavor right now to participate in. As well as not just national electoral politics, but also national, like, you know, organizational efforts. You listed Sunrise Movement. You can look to really any environmental organization that's on a large national scale. And you can point to many of the same things taking place there. But at the end of the day, whether it's a local organization or a national organization, local politician or national politician, activists and organizers are going to be the only ones that hold them accountable. And that's why I think you need to have both. You need to have people who are working on both sides. But at the end of the day, I think local politics and organizing should be the main focus of the broader left movement today. I think that's where we could best apply ourselves.
One thing I'm worried about is, I think local politics is like local electoral politics is more effective than national. But what if, let's say, we start focusing on it too much? One of the powers that be, like these people who are involved with the World Economic Forum or who are involved with big tech, like what if they start funding more resistance against these people that promise to be fighters like Kshama Sawant?
They are. I mean, they put up a multi-million-dollar campaign against Kshama Sawant. They had a Amazon-backed gay man, you know, who ran with like a rainbow flag logo as he led the Chamber of Commerce of Seattle, and she still beat him. And she didn't compromise on any of her values to beat him. And by defeating him, she's been able to pass the tax Amazon and big business piece of legislation that she put forward in Seattle, been able to guarantee housing to unhoused people in Seattle at an unprecedented rate. And I think those are undeniable victories.
Do we have enough time though to like keep pushing for people like Kshama Sawant? Like by the time that we have like a whole bunch of people like her, like when would that be? Like would it be fast enough? I think that the only way for that to happen is if we increase their sense of urgency. If we're applying as much public pressure as we can, what do you guys think?
I mean, I kind of agree with you in the sense that like we don't really have time, because for every one Kshama Sawant, how many AOCs do we get? How many Elizabeth Warrens do we get? How many Debbie Wasserman Schultzes do we get? Even if you can get someone in at the local level, it can't really help the bigger picture much to a degree if they're still going to be hindered severely by the institution that they ultimately serve at the end of the day. Because most politicians, despite what's in their hearts, most politicians often end up legitimizing the very system that's killing all of us to this day. Most politicians are corporate empire PR agents, which is what I like to call them. And like several of said politicians show up in these Davos panels with the World Economic Forum, literally conspiring over how they're going to shape the world, over how they're going to enable this great fascist reset coming to get us all. Because like Kirsten Gillibrand was on there, Ted Deutsch was on there, Greta Thunberg goes to Davos yearly at this point. So many activists, even at a national level, go to Davos. So many politicians, local and national level, go to Davos to receive orders from their masters, because the way these panels work is they only give the first 30 minutes of the panel public access. The rest is all in private. So they get to literally conspire about how they're going to hinder liberation movements, about how they're going to crack down on all of us. So even though I applaud someone like Kashama Sawant for her organizing in her position, at the end of the day, we need to get rid of this whole system. We can't afford to legitimize it any further. We can't afford to legitimize centralized structures as a whole further, because large hierarchical structures exist within activism too. And that shit eventually trickles down as well, like with something like Sunrise. They are so obviously co-opted at the national level, and it's begun to trickle down. I know a lot of great people within Sunrise, but everybody I have met within a leader position there, even at a local level, is a dead-eyed activism speak robot. So we can't really afford to be riding within that system any longer. We have to take a step outside of it and kind of go at it from the outside, pressure it from the outside, and really take it down and build something up that doesn't rely on hierarchical structures that oppress so many.
Yeah, go ahead, Ali, if you want to add something on to that.
Well, I keep going back to human motivation. Like, what's going to motivate people to think outside the box? I don't have the answers to that, because all of us have different interests. We have different beliefs on some things, and that's fine. Let me just use this as an example. So we're going back to politicians again. I'm just saying, as far as what's more important, which is activism or electoral politics. Again, what do you hope for from a politician? You want them to effectively be able to make the changes that they run on, and at the very least, provide some kind of understanding as to why it didn't work. You don't get that, though. You don't get politicians talking to you like you're a real person. When I was doing research on the DSA a month or two ago, and I was looking, I believe it was on their Medicare for All page. It was like a kind of like a marketing toolkit, like a suggestions page on like how to talk to voters to get them to get on board. And the suggestion was that you talk to them like they're in middle school. And I can, post this in the chat too. So like that's what, and I'm just using one example of like a political arm, but like that's what they think of us. Like they think that we're stupid. So for me, it's really hard to imagine like really showing them any respect as far as like going out of my way and providing dollars to people that they don't care. I don't, it's hard for me to keep going on this, only because I'm just kind of an actions person. So like words mean nothing to me. I want to see action. I want to see like what you're going to do. And at the very least, at least explain to your voters why your campaign's actually bullshit and you're just running to make some money, because that's most definitely what happens a lot of the time. There's campaign finance laws that outline that you can just say that you're thinking about running for election, and that is considered, you can then start collecting campaign money. It's a money grab. I mean, it's a great deal, really, if you think about it. I mean, but honestly, like it's such a dishonest process at this point. I think it can come later. And I'll agree with Jackson. I think local elections aren't completely lost, but it still has to, eventually work its way up. And the system that we're in, money rules everything. And so you can be as convicted as, about what you believe and say all these things to voters. But when you get into a certain level of power, I promise you that money is going to come and talk to you. And it would be pretty hard to say no to millions of dollars. I'm not saying it's right, but I can't say that I don't know what any of us would do. But that's the system. So if we're cool with that, then sure, let's keep doing it like we've been doing it.
Yeah, go ahead, Jackson.
Otherwise, I think it's time to change. And I don't have all the answers, but that's just how I feel.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, again, I don't think we had any points of disagreement there. At least I didn't with you guys. I too recognize that there are many dishonest actors within, pseudo progressive movements, and they are taking advantage of that and, rising to powerful positions where they no longer even have to interact with everyday leftists like us. And then they get replaced by other people who used to be individuals like us. It's the cycle. And it's happening before our very eyes right now. With, I guess not before our very eyes, we all saw it coming long before, but like with many people who are witnessing the squad sell them out for the first time, it's like, this is the same exact thing happening. We thought we finally had people, who are going to represent us, and then they are selling us out. So, I mean, I don't know. I do think that there are still some honest actors on a local level. Obviously, Greta Thunberg and Kirsten Sinema are not leftist leaders that we are propping up, or I'm trying to prop up as people who are, creating a new system or a new vision for, a socialist future or anything. But you can't just put up people like Greta Thunberg or Kirsten Sinema as that, when there's actual people that I think, like People's City Council Los Angeles is a organization that comes to mind locally that hasn't abandoned their principles. They're, Black Lives Matter organization in Riverside County, like Inland Empire, they literally just left the global BLM network because of the fact that they feel as though the global BLM network isn't representing what they set out when they became a part of the global BLM network. So I do think that there's organizations and individuals who are involved in politics on a local level. I can't point to any on a national level that I fully trust and think are fully intertwined with an actual socialist movement and representative of what could eventually become a broader socialist movement moving forward. But on the local level, I think there definitely are. And I would hope that we don't just like compare people like Kirsten Sinema or Greta Thunberg to individuals that are actually honest actors on a local level.
Yeah, I don't trust any of those politicians on the national level. And I mean, I did for a bit in 2018. Like I had
there was a time.
I had some hope for AOC. I had a lot of hope in Bernie Sanders, who woke me up. But it's been, man, these past 4 or 5 years I've been learning a lot, especially once I started doing this, because I dove deeper than I thought I was gonna go. But I'm a little optimistic about how there's more people that are more informed now than they've ever been. But is it fast enough? Is it fast enough for enough people to realize that there's all these freaking powers that be that are controlling everything, controlling our elections, controlling the information we receive from everywhere, the mainstream, like everywhere you go, like you go to a restaurant, they're playing mainstream media, you go to a bar, they're playing mainstream media, you're using public transportation, you see all these freaking ads from these corporations and from these newspapers by these mainstream outlets. And then in entertainment also, like there's some propaganda there. So there's still some people who are still stuck in the matrix. So how can we accelerate waking these people up? How can we improve organizing? Like what strategy do you propose, Glory?
I mean, energy is very, very much there. That's something that you can't deny, like wherever you are. Like the energy is very much there, but I worry so much about my generation's energy getting co-opted by the powers that be with organizations like I brought up earlier, like Extinction Rebellion and Sunrise and Black Lives Matter. And I worry about that, but I also worry about all these hyper-partisan narratives that are being spearheaded by progressive leaders. This incoming wave of censorship is being pushed by people like AOC who want to help control misinformation, by CEOs of corporations like Smile, which is supposed to be an LGBTQ advocacy group when in reality they're partnered with firms like Wells Fargo, and they're advocating for these disinformation control campaigns and saying, oh, it was such a great thing when Facebook and Twitter censored the president because it reminds you of the powers of the CEO, and taking all that energy from these social movements and putting it into empowering the system and empowering the police state and the national security state, because we need to have, and that's one of the things that I'm really excited about joining MCSC for, is we need to have people that are willing to pull them away from falling into these hyper partisan traps, like on the left too. Like, I love People's City Council. I love on the ground journalists like Vishal Singh and Sean Becker Carmichael. I love them to death. And every time I see them on the ground in LA, it's calm. And in fact, I see them on the ground tomorrow at 9 a.m. We're going to be in front of LA City Hall protesting some stuff. And if you can make the drive down from Orange County, Jackson, you are more than welcome to come through. But the problem with them is I love them to death, but they're also so hyper partisan to the point where they fall for the things that's like everything mentioning the Great Reset is QAnon. Anything questioning these vaccines is QAnon, despite the fact that you have a history of medical experimentation on Black and brown people, despite the fact that Operation Warp Speed literally contracted Palantir to help distribute the vaccines, despite all the possible skepticism. Any questioning of Op Warp Speed, any questioning of a shady figure who was referred to as Hillary Clinton's doctor admirer is now QAnon. And I see so many well-meaning people fall for that. This election, they fall for the fact that this election was fortified, not totally rigged. You can't have an illegitimate election and a legitimate election in the United States when it's privately owned, when we can't verify the results, when we can't have proper audits at all. They fall for the narratives that listen, I fuck with Marxist-Leninists heavy, but they fell hook, line, and sinker too for this insurrectionist narrative. The first insurrection where people were walked in through velvet ropes. So there's so many hyper partisan pitfalls that pit people against each other instead of those at the top. So that's my hope, is that we're able to get on the ground and really just talk to anyone, left or right, and get them to see that the enemy is not each other, that we can't be snitching on each other. We have to focus our energy at the system that's killing all of us.
Yeah. There were. I gotta say, there were some MLs that weren't falling for the insurrectionist narrative, but I think a big reason for that was because there's now BreadTube, which repeats a lot of State Department talking points and is like a perverted version of what Marxism, Leninism actually is. And that's why not only with like the synthetic left, like these Sam Cedars, these ass kissers for these politicians that, protect AOC and the rest of the squad as if they can do no wrong and that we have to be nice to them because it's the best we got, as if we can't do better, as if we can't improve them. I think just as important as it is to inform the public about our system and how it's affecting all of us, it's also important to expose the people who are misguiding others. Whether they're misguiding people on purpose or on accident, we have to do it. I know all of us have done a great job at like shitting on Jank, and like shitting on all these other people. Sometimes it feels like they're like, they know the truth. They know the truth. They know that they're grifting and that they're misguiding people, but they don't care because they're comfortable and they're like, you know what, I'm just gonna keep doing it because it's now just my job. There's some of these commentators who I used to respect and now it seems like they've gotten lazy and they don't want to go deeper into like what's going on. But yeah, Ali, let me know if you have anything to add on to what me and Glory said.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think that just again, I'm in my mind, I'm thinking like I always say this, I should be a little more patient sometimes with people that are just kind of waking up to what's going on, because I feel old, but like the last 10 years, I mean, really.
You look great though.
Like I said, it goes back a long, 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 long time. And I'm not going to get into the history of it. But when I really kind of woke up was Obama. It's just the same thing over and over. I feel like I should have born it out, and I don't, because it's, how do you get people to just see reality on such a large scale, but not feel like they can't do anything about it? Because I had a teacher actually in high school that was the one honest teacher, and she would always say, care, because your generation is going to be told like you don't have a voice at all. And I think that rings true in a lot of ways. A lot of people really don't think that they can do anything, because I was talking about this the other night. I think another big way to change things is understanding that not everyone is going to see the world as you. And if you're going to try to always push that on others, you're going to always be disappointed. Like, people are going to see the world differently based on the experiences that they've had. And that's okay. But if you can unite people on, beyond political parties, like a post-partisan issue like free speech, that's something that's a really easy segue I found to get people to kind of think more. All you have to, you don't have to like go in with somebody and be like, hey, the Great Reset, blah, 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 because God knows I've done that before. And people are like, what the fuck are you talking about? So
I've done that at Stop the Steal rallies before. Some random dude came up to me and was like, I just have to say I love your hair. And I was like, oh man, yeah, I'm glad you think that, because like I was up all night doing some research on the Great Reset.
Yeah.
Oh, shit, for real? And then we'd go on. But a lot of people, they're like, what are you talking about? And that's fine. I can't be mad at people, for where they're at. But if you can kind of tip into something with a little less, that's not so, I suppose, controversial or quote out there, you can be a little more effective. So free speech is something that I found I can really connect with people on a lot of different levels, and people that aren't political at all. Because remember, there are tons of people that aren't political, and I don't really blame them. There was a little time, it was, I believe, in 2016, after everything happened with Bernie, I was like, screw this, I'm done. And I mean, I did realize like Donald Trump was running, and so I was kind of paying attention. But for the most part, I was at the time kind of checked out for a little bit. I was done with it. And it was nice. Ignorance is bliss. It really is. I don't, sometimes I wish I didn't love going down different rabbit holes. I'm a weirdo. Like, I'll research like huge reports of like committees and stuff. It's fun for me, and I want to share that information with people. But people that aren't really into politics and policy and such aren't going to vibe with that necessarily, and that's okay. So it's figuring out how to meet people kind of where they're at. Like Skeptical Mantis is always talking about street epistemology. I finally can say that. Yeah, I mean, it's great, because you just got to relate to people, because there's a lot of disaffected people out there that really don't care. And like I said, I don't blame them always, because they've never been shown any care by the people that claim to care. Actions speak louder than words. Look around you. Everyone knows something's wrong. Everyone can feel it, honestly. Like, it's been a long 2 years. There's something wrong. And I don't know. I'm not sure how to change it all, but I would say just meet people where they're at, and instead of coming at them and trying to shove down an ideology, because that's what's happening right now in the world, in this country, and it's been coming for a while, and it's really scary. It's really scary.
Yeah, that's a bit of a self-awareness and self-therapy that we gotta do to ourselves, is understand. And shout out to Steve, and also shout out to Sleepy J, because he helped me out with connecting to the streams here. So thank you, Sleepy J. But yeah, it's something Steve says is that to be patient with people, because they're in different parts to the path towards systemic and societal awakening. I know it can be hard sometimes, especially with people you're close to, who you put on a high pedestal, on on people who you trust, like my family, for example. Like, I sometimes I just can't help it, and I inundate them with a lot of articles and stuff and information, and they still, it's hard for them to process. Like, a lot of people have this illusion of what reality is, and they feel comfortable with that illusion. And then when you try to present them with information that breaks them away and makes them realize that reality is not what they thought it was, it's kind of like a survival mechanism where they want to go back to where they were feeling comfortable in, and they resist what you're saying. And we see that in all parts, all points in the path towards awakening. maybe when you when you get to a certain part in your path, when you get pretty far, then maybe you're more open. But man, there's a lot of people who back at like 2-3 years ago I thought were like exceptional, like they knew so much, and then I realized that they didn't know as much as I thought, and then I get upset. And then when I see them presented with other information from other journalists or other commentators, they hear that information and then they want to resist because they think they have it all figured out. Like there's other people who comes to mind right now. Or Sam Cedar is a prime example. Like if you try to like educate him on something or inform him about something, he's just so arrogant and he thinks he understands. I can also see that in people like Kyle Kalinske. Who else? Like when you like somebody like Greg Palast, I guess too. Like when somebody presents them with a lot of legit evidence about the shenanigans that happened with the 2020 elections, he thinks he has it all figured out, and he resists.
Yeah. He literally writes the same book every year. and then like people trip over their dicks to have him on. It's like, hey, I'm going to write a book called How Trump Stole the 2020 Election.
Right. Like,
Yeah. What I was getting at is like there's people also like Gloria, you brought up the Sunrise Movement and how that's co-opted by a lot of these people that are connected to the World Economic Forum. Jackson, I know you used to be a part of the Sunrise Movement, and then you said you saw some stuff while you were there, and then you left. I've heard from other people on there that have only really heard of like the phrase just like Green New Deal, and then they just repeat that. And they don't know that like the OFF Act exists. But what was it that you saw like when you were working with the Sunrise that made you want to leave? And did you tell other people about it? And were there people that were resisting some of the stuff that you were telling them? What happened?
Yeah, I mean, it was just there. I mean, there's a few things. Like one of the biggest things that was a standout for me was even in the 1-page resolution that they put forward on a Green New Deal. They'll never be bothered to actually introduce legislation on it. That will never happen.
Yeah.
That requires far too much work for them. Apparently, they're very busy doing photo shoots on Rolling Stone with Nancy Pelosi. People like AOC. But it's very difficult to even have a conversation about nuclear energy with any of them. It's like instantly shut down a conversation about nuclear energy or nuclear waste, and including like any larger discussion about waste storage for energy production in the United States in a Green New Deal, which obviously would be a massive jobs program. Just looking at the storage of nuclear waste or toxic waste, radioactive waste, high burnup fuel, things like that. But yeah, any larger discussion about nuclear power is always shut down. There's not even a debate about like thorium reactors, small modular reactors versus fission and fusion reactors. It's just like no discussion whatsoever. And when you can't properly lay out a vision for what you're fighting for, then people aren't going to want to fight for the vision that you're putting forward, And that's what I think a lot of people saw happen with Sunrise Movement. Unfortunately, nuclear power just isn't a thing that a lot of people are familiar with or have a deep knowledge and understanding about. So sometimes people just don't want to talk about it because they don't know and they're not willing to do the research on it. But that was probably the first thing I saw where I was like, ooh, I don't know about this. And then Tulsi Gabbard came surfing out in front of the power plant in my community with myself and a few other local stakeholders, and my friend Leona Morgan, who is Danae. She lives in New Mexico, where they're planning to store all this nuclear waste. We had a conversation with her about like the shortcomings of the proposed Green New Deal and why we don't really fuck with it, and why a lot of people prefer the OFF Act over the Green New Deal. And obviously, like the Sunrise Movement has been thoroughly corrupted in recent years. It's an extremely hierarchical structure. There's no real opportunity for, actually having like democratic discussions in the Sunrise Movement. But yeah, those are a few of the issues I had with it. And Ali, I liked what you had to say regarding like meeting people where they're at. I think that's always a good, baseline way to try and engage people in a broader left movement or an anti-establishment movement. And I think it's awesome that there are people who are trying to reach across the aisle in left media today, talking about like anti-cop sentiments or why we should defund the police, exposing corruption, pay-to-play politics in government and in the media, especially surrounding foreign policy, and also exposing the lies that are told to us in countries like Venezuela, Iran, you name it, right? All the North African shadow wars that are going on right now, as well as the intelligence apparatus in this country and the deep state, and why we need to combat that aggressively. I think those are all like points of agreement that most people have, regardless of their opinions on, say, abortion or something like that. That can really unite us against the establishment. So it's been cool to see a lot of independent and left media starting to have those conversations with people on the other side of the political spectrum. And I've been trying to have more conversations like that and surrounding those issues in my own life with friends and family who I don't necessarily agree with on every issue.
Do you sometimes get met
Yeah.
are met with like resistance, like when you try to tell them about things like the Off Act or how like the Green New Deal isn't effective enough?
I'm assuming he said off act. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
No, I mean, I usually when like having these conversations about regardless of what like preconceived notions people have when they come into a conversation, I think if you just hear them out and maybe not even try to impose your own beliefs on them, but like question what their beliefs are and what their the narratives that they're espousing are, that oftentimes has a at least in my cases, like I've had a pretty good success rate of challenging people's ideas and what they think to be true and what they think to be the facts of the matter regarding any of those issues that I listed. So yeah, I think if you just always approach something with an open mind, that's a good starting point. But bringing it back full circle to like what you were talking about earlier, the question is whether you're focusing on changing people mind to mind, or whether you're working in an organization, or whether you're working on a local campaign. It's like, how do we do this fast enough? And when I was talking about local politics and local organizing earlier, I wasn't trying to say that like that's the end all be all answer to like having this extreme radical quick shift that we need. I think that would be extremely naive if someone thought that to be like the solution. But yeah, it's tough to imagine what that solution will be when there's always the pressure coming from the establishment, from the rich and the powerful and the elites. Like you see now, like mainstream media companies are just streaming their regularly scheduled broadcasts onto YouTube. They're infiltrating these spaces now as well. So it's a constant fight.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think as tough as the pressure is, it's important that we realize that there's more of us than there is of them. And that's how it always be. That's how it always is. United in numbers, we can rise up. And that's part of what being an activist means to me, is kind of letting people know, listen, we all have the power to stand up to the national security state. That's why, that's one of the points I try to get out in these weekly tweet storms with hashtag We Are All Assange. Like, every one of us has the power to draw the ire of the national security state, to stand up against the empire. And I mean, that was really interesting what you were saying with Sunrise, Jackson, because I mean, part of the reason why I refer to a lot of their leadership people as Dead Activism Speak Robots is because that's all they know. They only know buzzwords like Green New Deal, climate change, the climate strike movement. Meanwhile,
Net zero.
like I've done so much research. I've done so much research to see if they made any comments on the fact that there are stakes being sold out for the ocean floor right now for the deep sea mining, which is going to take place in order to provide the resources necessary for the fourth industrial revolution. And which is just an awful idea, by the way. It tears up the substrate beyond recollection. You don't know what the noise or light pollution could do to populations of animals that are mostly albino or around hydrothermal vents. It's disgusting to think of the consequences of that. And yet here Mark Benioff is, owner of Time, actively selling out stakes and presenting himself as a gatekeeper for deep sea mining, and Sunrise has no comment whatsoever for it. The remotely closest thing I found was like a little milquetoast statement from Greenpeace. That's the only thing I found. So it's so disingenuous when people present themselves as gatekeepers of environmental issues, despite the fact that they very clearly don't care about something like nuclear power, don't care about an issue like our oceans or overfishing or any of the detrimental effects that our imperialism has on the land itself in places like Central Africa or the Congo or the Niger Delta. It's disgusting to think so, and it's only going to get worse if we keep pouring our resources into this perpetual wheel of electoralism, if we keep legitimizing this system. I'm not necessarily asking people to go and overthrow the system tomorrow, but what I'm asking is that we band together and not give in to this system, because if, I'm going to use Steve's favorite term, if we can all collectively ascend, then we have the numbers to be able to get shit done. We do. We just need to believe that. We just need to put that in our minds.
And yeah, and there, I always wonder why narratives, people want to curb certain narratives from being pushed, even ones that are really bad. And people might not agree with me on this, but I am a free speech absolutist, meaning that there are consequences sometimes for the things that you might say, be whatever they may be. But, you've got to question why time after time a certain narrative is not allowed to be talked about. It's again that simple. So that's why I go back to just providing people with the knowledge and in ways that are relevant to them. It's like, I don't think this is going to be like a one size fits all approach. Obviously it's going to be like multifaceted. It's more just empowering people to act in a way that feels comfortable for them in a sense, but also is effective. So I mean, just right here, even like the three of you, you're all extremely effective in what you do. And you also all believe in what you do. So that's important as well. I mean, you can get a sense if you follow enough people, you can tell who's kind of in it for the money or, just the fame. And that's fine. People are going to be people. And then others are in it because it's what they believe. And those are the people that motivate others, I think, the most. At least they motivate me. And all of you are effective in what you do. And there is a responsibility that comes with that, I think, for all of us, if people are listening. I'm just a nobody, but it's flattering that people listen to me. So, knowing that, I want to give people the right information. When I do the research, it's painstaking, but I want to get both sides. And again, it's always about just trying to be objective when you look at things, even from people that you've been told your whole life that you're supposed to hate. I'm from Indiana, okay? Like I moved to Chicago about 14 years ago. So I have friends that they grew up in conservative homes. Are they all racist assholes? No, they're not. They're kind of just normal people. Maybe their parents had some terrible, shitty racist beliefs. But again, you don't want to generalize. And I see a lot of that being pushed by mainstream narratives. And that's for a reason. Not only is division profitable, it's designed that way to keep people from talking to each other, because there are more of us than there are of them. I mean, look back at the people who do bring people together. What happens to them? They're usually killed. So I'm not saying, go to this as you're going to get killed, but the more of us that there are just like continuing to speak out about it. And I know I sound cliche, but you've got to meet people where they're at and stop obsessing over labels so much. Like, I don't get it. I don't get why people are so obsessed with labels. And I know that they can be helpful in a sense, but a lot of the time I think people just hide under labels because it's an easy way to say like, oh yeah, this is what I am. Because a lot of people don't know what they stand for because they're not given the information that they need to make the right decision. So you guys know me, I'm always going to like kind of go all over the place, but I always go back to like the information, the sources of information, and learning about who is controlling those sources of information, called narrative management. And I'll also give a shout out to Steve because you guys were talking about that the other day. But it's a real thing. It's narrative management is nothing new, and it's the easiest way to control people. So if you keep falling for it, we're going to keep getting the same result.
Yeah. One thing I will say, like coming out of studying biology, like in academia, like the biological departments and the other science departments, they're so focused on their research that they don't think about like they're not like systems thinkers like us, like at a societal or political level. They don't see how, these corporations that control everything don't have the best intentions. Like when it comes to environmental issues, the people understand, like people who are studying like environmental biology or who are studying ecology, like they understand that there's certain chemicals and stuff that cause harm to organisms, but they still think that we can still have the system that we have and that we can work within the system to fix it. And if only they could talk to an activist or somebody who understands systematically how this is all connected and how it's because of this capitalist system that we have, that's what's causing all these endangered species. That's what's causing all these polluted waters, polluted plants and food that we consume that lead to autoimmune diseases, leads to cancers and such. But we're not communicating. That's what Ali was saying. Like they want to keep us apart. They don't want us to talk. Things need to be more multidisciplinary. And with the current system that we have for our education, it's all so focused. It's not multidisciplinary enough. It's not cooperative. It's not like there needs to be people talking from all different fields. And that would lead to a better like that's why like in activist community, activist movements like the Sunrise, they don't understand like the biological significance. They haven't studied biodiversity. They don't understand. When they become climate activists, they're only thinking about the climate. They're not thinking about all these other environmental issues. They're not thinking about how we're endangering all these insects, and then that can lead to a whole bunch of different effects that later then comes back and affects us, because every species on Earth serves a role, an ecological role. But there's not enough communication. So how can we improve that communication? What do you think, Jackson?
I mean, there's no propaganda arm like the mainstream media in the United States, and they do an incredible job of just shifting the Overton window so far to the I don't even want to say right at this point, but to a point where there are certain untouchable issues, certain issues we can't talk about, certain things we can't talk about in this country. And I don't know. I think we have a lot to learn, obviously, like from countries like Venezuela. We can take tidbits of what countries like China are doing right now to eradicate extreme poverty. I think there's a lot we can learn from other countries and the successes they've had to bring to our movements here, and how we can unite people from like all sectors of society, people who excel in electoralism, or excel in mutual aid networks, or excel in grassroots activism and organizing, who excel in direct action, whatever, to come together and fight for a common good. But until we have that day, I mean, it's difficult to imagine a way in which we're actually going to be able to unite against like this megalodon of power that is the U.S. empire. And I don't know. It's just we have a bunch of baseline disadvantages of being in the United States that other countries and other people usually don't have to face. And that's something we're going to have to, look into. And by the way, for whoever in the chat was saying, talking about nuclear power, for the record, like I don't support nuclear power. That's why I was pissed off about the lack of, I guess, ruling it out in the Green New Deal.
I'm going to say really quick, if you don't mind. There's something I'm noticing. It's, I guess, it's in all media circles. I wouldn't say it's just kind of leftist, because I do like to watch like what's happening on the other side. It's always good to know what the mainstream is saying, and it's also good to know what your peers on the other side of the aisle are saying. But I've noticed that there's a lot of people that want to get other people on record for, like, they really want to know where somebody stands on a very like little point. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I like to know where people stand too, but what I'm getting at is that, like, when people are influential, or even just when people have an opinion, sometimes others are very stuck on that opinion, and like they're like, well, he supported that at one time, and like it just, the conversation devolves into nothing. And so again, I just go back to like understanding that not everyone's going to see the world the same way. But just kind of, I was only saying that just because somebody in the chat asked you about that, Jackson. It's just, again, it's just like, oh, he said one thing, he must think all this. And, you know, you do have to give people chances to kind of elaborate on stuff. That was just a random thought, but go on.
I agree with you like halfway on that one, because I think there's times in which people's judgment or their reasons why they say certain things might show you a lot about their character.
That's
I
true.
mean, you might agree with that. But I think there's clear examples, like, for example, with like, not to bring everything always back to force the vote, but like during force the vote, I think there were plenty of people who exposed themselves as individuals who, you know, had bad intentions. I mean, I'm sure there were some people who like fucking honestly believed that force the vote was not the right strategy. I never heard anyone put up another strategy for how we should implement Medicare for all, really, with the exception of the NNU model, which was the bullshit state by state model. But I think sometimes you can learn a lot from someone based on what they say and their opinions on a given issue. But yeah, I also agree that like we're never ever all going to agree on everything together, and we can't just like fucking cancel each other for like one honest disagreement on an issue when there's countless other issues that we have to care about and work on.
Yeah, I mean, when has humanity ever agreed with all of each other? I don't, you know, like I'm not sure when the expectation, you know, arrived that you do have to. You can be open to new information. That's what it is. It's not being married to your ideas and understanding that you don't know what you don't know, and that's okay. But it is okay not to know. What matters is being open to new information and realizing that sometimes you're not always going to be right. I'm certainly not always right, and I see it as a, you know, a learning experience. Because you were talking about force the vote, and from my perspective, the reason that I was more in support of it, and you know, I didn't really think that they were going to pass Medicare for all. I'm sorry, I did not think that. What I wanted from it personally, everybody had different reasons that they supported it, was because I wanted that strategy then to be used on literally everything else that any politician has ever said. When they're running, go. I want you to go on the floor then, like, prove yourself, because I know that they won't do it. And that's another way of showing what a farce all of it is. Now, I know that that's, you know, a little bit veering away from the Medicare for all issue, but what I saw from that, and unfortunately it did devolve into some really petty shit, that it got uninteresting for me, because it was a way to collectively, again, you could see it as a way to expose not only people who prop up these politicians, but the politicians themselves, the system that it is, and how it all works in Washington. I wanted those politicians to have to go on the record and say why they would not vote for Medicare for all. Why? Why won't you? You ran on that. Why won't you do it? Well, we don't have the votes. Okay, but can you at least stick true to your word and go vote on it? Yeah. They can't do it because they're donors, you know, they're funding. That's their funding. Their funding. And that's why I really didn't want to see there was so much fighting with force the vote. It wasn't that I was married to the idea of it, you know, making it happen. I really didn't see it happening. I'm just cynical, and I wanted to see people be like, wait a second. So if they won't vote on that, what about the other thing that this politician said that they would do? And, you know, I think that, I'm not saying that's a completely hopeless strategy, because that's a way to collectively get people interested and involved. But again, it goes back to like not falling for that fighting bullshit, like that just takes away the real problem, which is the oligarchy.
Force the vote was at least doing something. From that perspective, I was supportive of it. But the problem was there was so much like online bullshit, and from just bad faith actors who are nothing more than just narrative managers, white knighting on behalf of the national security state, coming into this thing and making this whole thing about, oh, I don't like Jimmy Dore. Oh, Jimmy Dore said this, Jimmy Dore said that, and devolving it into this whole issue on how much do you like Jimmy Dore? And then the debate about that would then suck all the air out of the pressing issue at the moment, which was the extradition decision for the Assange case being read out. Because at that time, that campaign was very pressing, but these debates around forced to vote sucked all the air out of that movement. And then to make things even worse, then you had MPP trying to come in with Nick Branya and co-opt the whole thing, despite the fact that it was organized by Jackson and supported by people like Nico, like Fee, like Pasta, like Franco, and trying to take that whole thing away from its original meaning. So that was kind of my hesitancy with Force the Vote, because once you get into that realm, it gets to a point where you start having debates that detract you from the original cause, which was Medicare for all. And like, I agree with Ali too. Like, it would be dope to see that applied to other issues, like not a $15 minimum wage, something way higher, because $15 minimum wage in California is just flat the fuck out disrespectful.
Same thing here in Montgomery
Like,
County.
Yeah. Or any other issue to try and set the standard for pressuring politicians, at least holding them accountable and doing something other than constantly kissing their asses and carrying fucking water for them, because we can't do that. We just can't. Or else they're going to get co-opted, or else they're going to fall, and they're going to keep sheepdogging people into this perpetual wheel of electoralism and duopoly politics that gets us absolutely nowhere, and party politics that gets us absolutely nowhere. Because like, this election as well, third parties fucked up. The Green Party fucked up. Libertarian Party, meh. PSL was meh. I give them respect for it, but then I haven't seen them do much since. And like, that's me judging their on the ground presence in LA. Political parties ramp up their activity before elections and then they let off. They relax. And then now we have People's Party coming into the picture, which is just like, come on. That name just screams COINTELPRO. I'm sorry. It screams limited
You're
hangout.
talking about People's
I'm sorry.
Party?
Yeah, People's Party. People's Party.
Yeah,
You could name it the coolest name ever. You could name it like Deep Throatitariat Collective, like Dem Slayer Party, like Kingdom Guns Party, or some shit like that, bro. I'd go straight into the anime realm if I'm at least trying to make a political party. But no, instead it's a bunch of people who used to be Bernie supporters who want to support Democrats without supporting Democrats. And then there's also the shadiness of Nick Branya, and not to mention having these volunteers, having these Black women volunteers like Renee come out. Like, I think they should be listened to. I don't know too much about their issue, but I want Renee and Camilla to get listened to, because if we keep falling into this cycle of pouring our resources into party movements, of pouring our resources into electoral movements, we might really we will run out of time.
Let's get into that. But before we do that, though, just remind me, please, because I do want to bring up the silencing that happened and the censorship that happened to Whitney Webb, James Corbett, Vanessa Veely, I'm going to have on the show on Sunday.
Franco! I love Vanessa. I'm so happy for you.
Thank you. Yeah, because that I wanted to bring that up later, because I think that's something that we really need to improve on, because if these people who are delivering the truth to people and information that mainstream media outlets, these investigative journalists, we have to protect them as much as we can. And I think it's the responsibility of commentators like us to be elevating those people's voices. But yeah, let's talk about MPP. I mentioned in my debate with Ian from Epic Philosophy, and in the recent videos that I did with MPP, I think that they put the cart before the horse. Since we're talking about electoral politics versus activism, I think that the strategy that MPP is using is too much electoral politics, not enough activism. A third party should evolve from the coalescence of all these different movements together. Like the anti-war movement, Black Lives Matter movement, the civil liberties movement, All of these different movements have to come together, all agree, and the people who lead these movements are usually the ones that are most educated, most open, and they talk to each other. You know, kind of like what we did with Force to Vote and the Assange people, like Action for Assange. You guys spoke. We had people from both events going to each other's events. We can expand that even further so that it goes nationally, so that we have all these different movements coalescing with each other, and then we get a general strike, and then we have the election integrity movement that's educating everybody about how ways that we can overcome our election system problem. Because how will a third party succeed if we're not acknowledging that enough? And I don't see that in MPP. I don't see them understanding in depth like the problems that we have with our elections. I don't see them in depth talking about our foreign policy. And I asked this to Nick Brana too. I said I think a way that Tulsi Gabbard was able to succeed so much is that she was able to garner the support of people from across the board. Like she was able to garner the support from conservatives, because a lot of people are sick and tired of being in all these wars. You know, if you have an anti-imperialist message, that can help unite a lot of people.
Yeah.
But it just seems like some of these people that are in leadership of MPP, some of them may be genuine, but I just don't think that they're knowledgeable enough to be strong enough leaders. It's a lot of them don't even know how to deal with certain people. Like if you're a leader, you have to have characteristics of a leader. You have to understand how to deal with people. You have to make people feel like they're being listened to. And if people are like shouting at you and stuff, you have to know how to deal with them. It's like, hey man, listen, like I understand you're frustrated. Listen to me. I'm gonna get you. I'm doing the things that I'm gonna do the things that you want me to do, right? So let me hear, like, what is it that you want me to do? I'll hear you out, and then I'll try to implement them. I'll try my best to implement them. But it just seems like they're more focused on getting on being on independent media platforms, like on Jimmy Dore and Graham Elwood, on Lee Camp, more so than they are on organizing on the ground. I know I rambled on that a bit, but I want to hear what your thoughts are on that.
It's your show, Franco.
Here it is. But who wants to go? Wait, I'm sorry, I didn't hear. Who are you asking about that?
Oh, just whoever wants to go first. If you guys want to piggyback on anything I said, agree, disagree.
Well, I'll admit I didn't really pay attention much to MPP at first. I kind of was like just sitting back and like watching it like play out, because you've listened to me. If you guys know me, I'm cynical, so I'm just like, it's probably the same as the others. And unfortunately, what I'm finding is that it might be worse. And I mean worse in that I don't know if the intention is to ever actually run people. It might be, maybe this year, I don't know, but I don't think so far there's been I don't think there's actually been candidates. And I know like the strategy just kind of reminds me of what I saw with DSA. And doesn't that just lead people back to the Democrat Party? Oh, it does, because it's part of the Democrat Party. So I just I'm gonna have more to say on this, in the coming days, but what I'm finding so far is just that there's a lot of people that are really hurt, and they put a lot of time into something they believed in. I feel badly because I don't like to see people get taken advantage of. And I mean that in a way of like people that are considering running down the line. I don't want to see them taken advantage of. I don't want to see people taken advantage of, organizing for something. And then they're not, it's literally called the People's Party, and it just doesn't sound like they're listening to the people. So it doesn't really make sense to me. It doesn't like compute. But I don't even think that they're technically registered as a corporation that is really even reliant on the members. I think that they're allowed to kind of operate as like the top is choosing everything, while there's an illusion that it's like a democratic association. I'm speaking a bit vague because I'll have more on this later, because I wanted to give it a chance. I always come into the story objectively. But what I've heard and what I've read and what people who have gone through a lot of really shitty experiences with it, who have nothing to gain from talking about it except just trying to get their side of the story out. I've not been too impressed with the response from MPP. I used to work in marketing, and I just like kind of the basics of marketing and like your brand. And I know it should be more than that, but just basics is it's like damage control. Like you've got a problem, you've got a big problem. There's a lot of people that are not happy with you. So if you want to handle that, that's a good idea because then you could, probably get your shit together. But if just ignoring people and immediately calling them infiltrators and kind of projecting what it seems like, they might be doing onto others, that's not cool either. I don't know the whole story. I would like to find out, but it's just not a good vibe so far. And it just doesn't seem like there's really a big strategy here. So I don't know. I would like to be wrong on this. I want them to do well. Like I like the idea of it. I like the idea of all types of people coming together. But I did see a video of the, I don't know if is he the founder, Nick Brana? I honestly never really heard of him until this, so I don't really know him. But like he was talking about just this like kind of fixation on not taking corporate money. And that stuck out to me, not because that's like a cliche, but because if you have an investor in a party, you can take money that way. So I just don't necessarily think that it's as people-centric as it comes out to be. I could be wrong, and please tell me if I'm wrong. Anybody.
I mean, my beliefs are pretty much the same as Ali's, and I'm not saying that like I want it to fail and like I want all the people who put their time and resources and effort into it to be like hurt because of it. I'm just saying that I don't think the solution is another political party, especially one that appears to be so Democrat adjacent. Yeah. Like one that appears to just have a ton of former Bernie supporters. Because when they had like, what was it, their 37th founding convention or something, I'm exaggerating the number obviously, but like they had one of many founding conventions. And in the last one they had, like half of the people on that were Biden voters. Like half of the people on that were carrying water for the Democrats in the general election. Like I just don't think that a movement for a people's party is the solution, especially the way that people are going about it, like Ali was just talking about. Like the fact that they're putting forward a bunch of influencers and thinking that that's somehow going to help them. Like all the stuff I'm hearing from actual organizers, from people again like Camilla and Renee who are having adverse experiences with it, and when they come out they're being laughed at and ignored and treated as jokes. Like I don't think that the way they're handling that whole situation, especially with Black women organizers, is just not it. Like that's such a deterrent from any organization, period. Never mind one that wants to make itself a political party. Never mind one that wants to be some great people's party, some, like I guess post-partisan or working people's party. I mean, for a party that kind of puts itself as this working class labor party, the faces at the front of it aren't really working class people, traditional working class people. It's like something with the Poor People's Campaign. You don't see a lot of poor people in that. That was something that Reverend Annie Chambers pointed out, which I love Reverend Annie. So I wanted to name drop her there. But I mean, you don't see a lot of really poor working class people at the face of a movement for a people's party. You just see Nick Brania and a bunch of other Twitter blue checks. You see people like Lee Camp and Jimmy Dore, and granted there are others. I know that there's more people to it than just Twitter blue checks. I know that there's more people to it than a couple of white saviors. But at the end of the day, what it appears as another white savior grift for Nick Brania. That's just what it appears at from the optics, especially when they're doing stuff like ignoring Black women organizers who are trying to petition it, ignoring people like Camilla and Renee, and just completely glossing over issues, giving the most surface level answers. Like I watched Franco's interview with Nick Brania. Every answer he gave looked like he was being fed a talking point. every answer he gave looked like he just didn't understand it. And like, to speak to Allie's point about the no corporate PAC money thing, it's like this whole idea of no corporate PAC money has become a progressive brand. So at this point, like, what's the point of no corporate PAC money when your brand is already pulling in money? When MPP, like when they put out those emails for Force the Vote, those were email lists for them. Like, they're gaining email lists and money off of this image of being a working class movement and of being this, non-corporate, we don't take corporate PAC money movement. They're gaining money from that and then funneling it right back into electoral politics, which seems to be going either very, 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 very slowly or nowhere at this point.
Mm-hmm. And I gotta say real quick, like I said, I was kind of just watching it. It wasn't that I didn't think it would blow up as much as it did. And then I did watch, was Franco, you had a panel on, and then Jackson, I watched some videos with you too. And I gotta say, because I like you, Jackson, and you kind of got like stuck as like the man that had to answer for everything. I felt like for a little bit, like for MPP, and I didn't really understand why, because I felt like for you, I can tell you just want to believe. I think that you are optimistic, and which is good. Don't lose that, honestly. And so you wanted like to believe that it's a good place, and maybe it will be. But I mean, I just wanted to say that because I'm not trying to say like fuck all those people. I just like to call shit for what it is, and it's more about the organization. I'm less interested in the individual people, because that's not going to get us anywhere. You can point out that this person is shady or whatever, but it was just I agree with Glory just in her analysis of it. But my only thing that I want to kind of show, or at least understand about MPP, is how does the organization actually work? I don't care necessarily who's running it. And I mean that in like, I care, but I want to show like the bigger picture, which is like, how is this organization actually operating? Because are they sticking true to their own words or the founders' words? Like how is that going, rather than just again seeing people devolve into arguments. But I just wanted to point that out. I found it interesting that like Jackson, I just felt like you were kind of like having to answer for a lot of actions that have nothing to do with you. So I just was curious like what you thought of that.
I mean, I kind of put myself out there to give commentary on what I thought was happening, and I tried to give my take on what was happening. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. If you're putting yourself out there, then you better be willing to, deal with whatever disagreements people have with you. And I think that's what it came down to.
I wasn't saying like that. I was honestly just asking like what it was like. I didn't mean it like in a bad way.
No. I'm not saying it in a bad way. I'm just saying like I put myself in the position, because I felt pretty strongly about what I had to say, and I still do. That being said, I think if we're having a conversation about any party, we have to have a conversation about all parties. And to wrap this into the larger discussion of today's stream, electoral politics versus activism, I think identifying solely with one party over another splits the left into further fragments. If you are a fan of electoral politics, than we need to be. Like, I voted for Greens this election. I voted for Dems. If I had a PSL, I probably would have voted for PSL. In a local district, I wasn't too familiar with their presidential nominee. I even voted for independents, and I voted for one Republican on my local city council. So I think like I get painted as the MPP person a lot. I think a lot of people get painted as like, one group or over another group. But I think it's important also not to like limit ourselves to one group over another group. Because if we all do truly believe that like national electoral politics shouldn't be the sole focus, then why are we kind of like attacking each other so vociferously over national politics when we know our focus should be on local politics and local issues and the issues as a whole? Like, that's what, I've always said. Franco, when you and I had a conversation about MPP, and you were kind of discussing your thoughts on how they should be more like organizing focus as a party as they build their movement, rather than putting out influencers and celebrities to try and rein people into their ranks. I responded and I was like, I think the sole focus of a party should always be around the issues. If you lead on the issues, then you're never going to lose people, because if you're deeply committed to the things that you're pushing for, then how could you lose? So I think that should be the focus. And I think, yeah, I mean, we should hold, I guess, that form of accountability to all parties, not just MPP, but also Green, PSL, everyone involved. And I mean, yeah, that's about as much as I had to say. I didn't know we were going to be having this specific conversation about MPP in a debate about this, but we're here.
This came up. I don't know.
Yeah, it's I had my time going after the Green Party, because that shit that Howie and like the Green Party leadership did to the rest of the candidates was just so effed up. Like like people have these hopes. Like it's people initially, like for me at least, people start out having hopes in like individual people, like individual politicians. Like I had my hopes in Bernie Sanders. I thought that he was gonna save. I thought he was gonna save us. Some people think that. Then people started thinking that Bernie and the squad were gonna save them. But Jimmy revealed how ineffective they were. Not just him, but other people were saying that. Some people with smaller platforms were saying that. But now, some people are shifting their focus. Some people saw the corruption within the Green Party. Some people are, some people are still with the Libertarians. I think it's more so people that used to be Green Party supporters are shifting their focus and having their hopes on MPP. I mean, that convention, there were so many people watching it. There were so many people that were excited. They had their hopes on MPP taking down the duopoly. They saw all these people that they admire who are commentators supporting it. So people were being guided towards MPP. But then seeing just like, the dysfunctionalities within it, going beyond the surface of like the nice things that they say and the things we want to hear, you see that they don't really have like a concrete strategy for how to actually take down the duopoly. And then people still have their hopes on it. And so I think it's important for people to be, swallow the bitter pill and see that MPP is likely not going to succeed because of these dysfunctionalities that aren't being acknowledged.
Sorry to interrupt, but wouldn't you
Yeah.
say that like targeting districts and running candidates in those districts across the country is a strategic plan as to how to like at least begin to crumble the duopoly in this country? Like
Yeah.
if you're
True that.
Yeah,
because
I had someone on named Steve Coleman who wanted to run locally, and then MPP didn't take action. They're like they were just telling him to wait, and then they're like
they haven't had like a slate of candidates yet. They're planning on having their first slate of candidates in the upcoming election. So if someone had like a special election they were running in say 2019 or 2020, I don't know when their election was. And I don't even know if they're focusing on local elections right now. And that might be a point of disagreement you might have with their strategy if that is the case. I don't know if that is the case. But my understanding is they're having their first slate of candidates in 2022. And they're focusing on congressional seats and, a presidential nomination, which personally I don't think it should be the focus. But that's just a disagreement I have.
So, I mean, I'm just genuinely curious because, like, that's what I was more wanting. I want to know, like, what they're going to do. Because, like, before you put like, trust in something, you kind of want to know the plan. And I get it that it's new, so I'm not even faulting it for that. But is that what the strategy, it sounds like it's like you go into congressional districts where it could be a win, but do you know if they're going to run as a third party or are they going to run as a Democrat and then, like, switch once they're in? I'm genuinely curious. And if you don't know, I'm just curious where I could go to find out. Because I've been the one saying a third party would be a great idea, but
yeah, I mean, they talk about. I mean, just came from a conversation, full disclosure, with Nick, and I mean, I know there's very strong opinions about Nick in this stream, but I mean, even in that stream, he discussed the fact that they're focusing on recruiting candidates and having people like nominate candidates that could run for Congress. If the committees that are approving or denying candidates that they want to put resources towards are approved, then they put subsequent resources towards them. That, I mean, I would imagine look like any other party. Green Party, I'm sure, does the same thing. Democratic Party, I'm sure, does the same thing and more because they have so many resources. But yeah, there's not going to be any concerted effort to elect Democrats and have them switch over. I think that's just sort of something like if Democrats or Green Party candidates or independents want to switch over, I mean, sure, that's already happened. I think there was a Dem or an independent in some state legislature and someone in a local position who decided they wanted to switch over. But I mean, it's not really a big deal. It's as simple as like, going online 5 minutes, re-registering as MPP. So yeah, I think their focus is going to actually be on running a third party slate, challenging Democrats and Republicans in congressional districts.
How will they overcome?
I mean,
I
that
think
sounds like a
that
pretty good
goes to-
strategy to me.
I think that goes to what we were talking about at the very beginning of this panel, which is at the very least prioritize local politics over national level. Like MPP, just from what you're saying, seems to be staying strictly on the national level, which is the most
I'm not sure about
co-opted
that. I
position.
said I wasn't sure about that.
Okay, yeah, but just from what you said, and just to top that all off, like I'm going to take another one of Steve's phrases. You can't vote your way out of an oligarchy. You can't just third party your way through this. Parties aren't going to be an answer for this because at the end of the day, they're just mechanisms that end up sheepdogging people into this system. And like, I'm saying this as someone who voted for Gloria La Riva in the 2020 election. Like, hell fucking yeah, I did. I'm from like Gusano Central. I wanted to parade the shit out of that I voted for Gloria La Riva. So yes, I did vote for Gloria La Riva, and she supported all political prisoners like Julian Assange. So I voted for her. But at the end of the day, MPP only focusing on national politics where it's the most co-opted, where you see the most empire PR agents, where they're literally engineering the most imperialist of imperialist foreign policies. That just seems antithetical to what we were saying at the beginning of the discussion, where national politics aren't it.
Yeah.
I mean, I said multiple times, I'm not sure if that's what they're actually doing. I just know that's one of the things they're doing. But
I mean,
yeah.
You did just come from a conversation with Nick
And
I'm
not a People's Party representative, and I just said it 3 times now that I'm not sure if they're focusing on local politics or not. So I know for certain they're definitely focusing on national politics, but I'm not sure if they're focusing on local politics. Now, the other thing you have to, I think we all have to look at is that there are efforts on a local basis to establish parties and grow from there. You can look at the California Progressive Alliance, Gail McLaughlin, what she's done in Richmond, California. You can look at the Socialist Alternative Movement that started really with Sean Sawant in Seattle. And you can see how they've been hindered at a local level to even expand beyond their counties. So I also agree that as an individual, I see myself focusing on local politics and local organizing because that's what I think personally I excel in. But it's going to be different for everyone. I mean, if someone thinks that they're, going to have the most impact focusing on international law at the United Nations, then I say go for it. We need people there. We need people at all levels fighting for what we collectively believe in. And I don't think like my opinion should hinder the work of other people who are acting on another level. And I also think this is kind of beside the point, but I think we should also, like I said earlier, take a look at how movements in Latin American countries specifically have kind of unrooted coup governments, regime change governments in countries all across Latin America, and maybe begin to apply those strategies here. And if you look at those, it always comes back to massive mobilization of grassroots organizing on both local and national levels.
The thing that these Latin American countries have, though, is they have more secure elections. Like here in the States, it's a big obstacle.
They do.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Venezuela specifically.
Yeah.
And Bolivia.
Yeah.
There's no There is no political party that I've seen, to my knowledge, that has made election integrity central to their campaigning. There has been no candidate that I've seen. I know there are so many candidates, but there's been no major blue check candidate that I've seen. Even Jen Perlman, who I spent a shit ton of time volunteering for, did not make election integrity a central part of her campaign.
She ignored
There is
it.
no one really fighting to ensure, and it's not on some bullshit where it's just like, oh, if we just vote harder, if there's so many of us, then we can get in and then fix election integrity. Like, no, that's bullshit. We need to actually ensure that there's secure elections here. We need to actually ensure that there's proper auditing mechanisms, that there's that the machines are actually open source and not just in name only, because it's all bullshit. And like the people of Bolivia, they put their bodies on the line to ensure election integrity. In Venezuela, they had international observers from Garland Nixon to the gray zone, and then the international observers put their lives at risk when they were denied entry into Colombian airspace. That's a story that Garland Nixon told. And they
Same
all
is about
put
to
their
happen in
bodies
Ecuador.
on the line to make sure elections were fair and secure. You don't see that here with any progressive, with any political party. Few people actually care about election integrity. And when they do, it's painted into a corner of QAnon. So it's easy to narrative manage from there. So I just don't see any party that's not making secure elections a central part of their platform and their organizing and their activism a solution if they're going to tackle electoral politics without that key component.
I think Tulsi Gabbard was like the closest person who came to even talking about like any election integrity related issues. And we all saw what happened to her.
Yeah, and like that's another thing, again, just a side note, the subject of Tulsi, since we're talking about other things. Like, again, I really wasn't as involved with Bernie on I think as the rest of you. I don't know for certain, but just I know that just it's not the last election. So I've noticed that there's a lot of lingering like resentment or just kind of like feuds between the Tulsi people and the Bernie people. And I know I'm never going to change anyone's mind on this, but that's the kind of shit I'm talking about. It's like we get, lost, not us, but just people get lost in that mix again when, you know what I mean? Like trying to like still arguing about why Bernie didn't work out, or like, no, Tulsi's this, no, Bernie's this. It's like,
just move on. It's over. The primaries are done.
It's
T word.
over. Right. Like that's what like all the stuff we're talking about tonight. Like this has been a good talk. I just keep seeing more and more people split off, and sometimes that's just gonna happen. But I don't like when people get taken advantage of, and that's like what motivates me to want to talk about this stuff. But
Or
I don't
people
know.
getting
I don't know where I was going with
misguided.
that. It was just a side note about like Tulsi. Like if I see one more argument about Tulsi and Bernie in a chat, I'm like, guys, we've been talking about this for forever, and where are we? We're at the same place. So I don't know.
That's right. Damn, I forgot what I was gonna say.
I know.
I was gonna bring up a point.
I want to say shout out to Thomas, Oklahoma in the chat. I like Thomas's comments. And I also I am sorry to hear you are also a victim of the open pit uranium mines in your on your land. And I think that, yes, I also agree. I think, we can learn a lot from indigenous led movements in Latin America. That's kind of what I was referring to when I was talking about that, and how we can build a broader movement here.
I will say, like, again, in order to have a good, successful third party, it has to evolve from the coalescence of different movements that all agree and understand what the root problem is. But we have too many fanatics right now on, politicians, and sadly, like, we have a lot of fanatics of the Libertarian, Green, and MPP, and that's not going to get us anywhere. We need to focus on the root issue. We need to get more involved. We need to help wake up more people. And if it's going to be a successful third party, it should be turning the whole country upside down. Like it should be organizing all these events. Like MPP almost got that. Like they were organizing a general strike, but then it never kicked off. But they have to be the first ones on it. Like when Jimmy was like brought up like that thing about forced to vote. Well, when like that was the first person who I heard talk about it. I don't know if there's someone else before that, but like what you did, Jackson, you took initiative to organize that. A third party that's going to be successful enough should have organized like a national forced to vote event, and then not only that, but all these other issues, a national event to protect whistleblowers like Julian Assange, like Mumia. But I just don't see that. And again, I'm gonna keep saying it. They put the cart before the horse. And the best thing that we can do is tell people that don't put all your chips into the MPP. There's other ways that you can get involved and help raise people's consciousness, because that's what we really need right now, is to increase the level of consciousness that we have collectively.
Yeah. And can I say one more
I mean,
thing?
it's to help dismantle the Mickey Mac complex, the military industrial congressional intelligence media academia think tank complex, because it's been expanded from just the military industrial complex to include all these other narrative managing agents. We have to be able to break that down. And part of it starts with giving a fuck you to YouTube and covering the shit that you want to cover, not censoring yourself, being able to cover shit that actually, being honest about what you're presenting your audience with. Like Jimmy Dore, he almost gaslights his audience into saying, "Oh yeah, I'm the only one covering this."
Oh my, I hate
Jimmy,
that. Like
Jimmy,
we got
no!
Jackson, we got Glory, we got Ali, all talking about this stuff. You're not alone, Jimmy. Why don't?
Yes, you have us. Okay. You have us saying this. You have Slow News Day saying this. You have so many other channels saying this. You have Whitney Webb being 7 years ahead of everyone on this, and then you present yourself as if you're the only one saying certain information. But the thing with Jimmy is, like, if he's gonna be like that with this audience, then don't be afraid to bring up the vaccines. Don't be afraid to talk about Op Warp Speed. Don't be afraid to go into 9/11, even though you'll do a deep dive on the OPCW scandal in Syria. Can you do a deep dive into the UC global spying of Julian Assange? How about talking about 9/11 so we can finally understand one of the key points, one of the key psyops in our history, which led us to the point where we are now? Can we talk about COVID? Can we talk about the Great Reset? So many people perpet themselves as the only ones in this, as the only ones really pushing the envelope. Come on, guys, you are not alone. And it's like, listen, I love these people. I got nothing but love for them. I've still watched them to this day. But stop acting like you're alone, because I promise you, you're not. And I promise you, you can push the envelope even more. You can become Julian Assange. You can be Assange. You can be even more of a thorn in the side of the empire. Because at the end of the day, no matter how far you choose to step outside the line, if you put so much of a toe outside of the line, you're going to be silenced, you're going to be censored, you're going to be fucked with. And if you're going to be accommodating and if you're going to self-censor, they're going to push you around anyway. That's why Steve automatically demonetizes all the videos, to not give YouTube any money. But still take super chats though.
Yes.
That's why all
I should have done that. Oh my god. Whatever.
When YouTube gave us our first QAnon context warning, you know what we did 2 streams after? We put it in our title. Give us the context warning. Yeah. And we had Whitney Webb and Johnny Vedmore on that episode too. You got to be in their faces with this shit and not afraid. Don't let them push you around, because otherwise they're going to keep doing it and it's only going to get worse and worse. And the gatekeepers are only going to get more and more fired up, and they're not going to stop. It's only going to get worse from here. So you have to take a stand. You have to support Assange. You have to say fuck censorship. You have to resist this incoming Great Reset. and this further augmentation of the national security state, which is being fueled by narratives of this insurrection, trying to tell you to snitch on your own neighbors. Really? You think when Clearview AI database searches went up and they were collaborating with law enforcement, you think that the FBI needs your help, needs your snitching to be able to do this shit? No, it's all to train you. It's all the training to be able to buy into their bullshit and snitch on your neighbors and further divide us. So don't let that shit slide. Question everything. Question these narratives, and don't be afraid to. Don't be afraid to question everything, even if you're wrong. Even if you're wrong. Like, bro, we want to be wrong on Op Warp Speed. We want to be wrong on 9/11 because the implications of us being right have led us to where we are now. So we have to be able to stand up. And, you know, one of the big things is it starts with getting out in the streets and occupying these spaces of the national security state, of places like Google, like Palantir, not just DC. Yes, DC, but not just DC. Like Silicon Valley, YouTube, just saying, fuck all of this shit. Fuck this whole system.
The most effective way for us to, you know, change I keep trying to self-censor myself because I'm afraid, but to take down the empire is we have to be fully informed about what is actually going on. So we really need to understand like the root causes, right? So I think a lot of people are afraid to go full on into this, and they only give you like some, I don't know, half measures of the truth. Like they don't want to go deeper into it. Like Jimmy Dore was saying that he's the only one that's criticizing Fauci. Really, Jimmy? Steve is saying like it's Jimmy's is terrified of competition. I don't know if he's conscious about that. It might be that he's only paying attention to like the bigger channels. But I mean, when's the last time that he had on like Nico or Fiorella or Pasa, all of who do a lot of research on election integrity and who do great work on a bunch of other issues? He's had each one of them on once. When's the last time he had on Richard Medhurst, who talks a lot about foreign policy and goes really into depth with it? Never.
The ratio of times Jordan Charlatan is on as opposed to someone from Action for Assange is on is literally infinity. I mean, when you think about it, because he's had Action for Assange on, you know, the prominent organizing group in Assange Action 0 time. And like, he won't have Steve on. He won't have Misty on, despite the fact that Misty's tweets were dead ass giving him whole videos. The amount of content he's probably made off Misty's tweets alone.
Oh no, I'm talking about Whitney Webb, my bad. But yeah, he's never had Misty on. Yeah. He's only shown her tweets. But look, I like Jimmy Dore was one of the people that woke me up the most. I appreciate the work that he does. I love Jimmy Dore. I've had his back for so long. So just Jimmy, if you're listening, because you've watched my show before, just take this as constructive criticism. You have people here who have your back. You know, we got your back, Jimmy. Whenever TYT is attacking you, you know, we're right there. You know, you got your little army. But, you know, just let other people know that you're not alone. We're not competing with you. We're trying to help you out. And by helping us out, you'd be helping yourself out too. And you'd grow even more. I don't know what you guys think.
I would love to see Whitney Webb.
These are thoughts I just had. I haven't spoken to a lot of people about this.
Have her on, but please read her shit.
Yeah, she's fantastic at what she does. When I found out there were people on the left, honestly, who were into Whitney Webb, I was like, okay, because I mean, you know, that's on me for not realizing that. Also, shout out to Tim Dillon because he always platforms. And I always have to say something about Tim Dillon just to lighten the mood a bit now. But yeah, I mean, he could bring on Whitney Webb. He could if he again like to actually talk about this stuff. The one thing I'll say about Jimmy Dore is that he is, you know, there's something with comedians. They're able to say more, so I think he is effective in that way. But then what I'm saying is, if you are only going to go that far, that's cool. But then I think it's good for like to direct people to other sources who know their shit about a certain topic, rather than either see them as competition or just like not mention them at all. I mean, because there's tons of channels, like just small channels that help their creators make better content. Like it's also all about like staying true to the people who were there with you from day one and like helped build you up. I think that's something that I'm sure it's hard to stay true to that, like when you get to a certain level of fame. But um, I feel like it's again the responsibility of a lot of journalists, especially and even comedians, anyone who's got a platform that's that big and they're going to talk about the issues to an extent. They can at least acknowledge or just talk about a little deeper because let's just be honest, like I don't see Jimmy Dore getting hit with like the YouTube restrictions that everybody else is subject to. And I'm not mad at him about it, but I hope that he takes that as, like a privileged opportunity to keep platforming different ideas, different people. I think it's great that he questions the Democrat Party. I frankly I didn't know that was such a popular thing. I think it's great because for a while it was just only Republicans. But at the same time, it's always good to keep the smaller creators who provide that information essentially for you. Keep them on the radar too.
What do you think, Jackson, about like what we said about Jimmy? Like, do you have any like agreements or disagreements? I know he was on your show recently. I will say he goes on people's shows, but I think that he should have invited you on for Force the Vote when you were organizing it and let people know there's this event in DC that's happening. This is the guy who's organizing it, Jackson Hinkle from the show The Dive. I don't know. What do you think?
I mean, I think people give me a lot of credit for organizing Force the Vote. I'm going to be honest, like I did not do a whole lot. Like you just kind of put together a date. There weren't any giant spectacles or direct actions involved. And I think that was in large part due to the cramped time we had to actually put this together. There was no like occupying of the streets. There was no, I mean, we wanted to occupy congressional offices, but those were shut down for COVID reasons. So, I think sometimes people have a bigger picture, like think larger of like what I did than what actually happened. But I mean, I think, yeah, everyone should continue to seek out new journalists and put new people on their shows. I can't speak for Jimmy as to like whether or not he's follows everyone who was mentioned just now in great detail. If I don't know a person's background a lot, like I probably would be less likely to bring them on my show than someone who I do know quite well. I know he's covered Assange a lot. I thought he's covered the UC Global scandal, but maybe he hasn't. I thought he talked about it with Chris Hedges, but I'm not sure if he has.
He did briefly, but like a deep dive would be awesome. But that's just me asking.
I mean, I wish I had the time to cover every single story in the world too, but you have to be selective. And I've covered UC Global, and yeah, maybe that is a story that he should put more effort into and time into and give more attention to. But yeah, I don't have a lot of, I guess, disagreements with you guys.
And there,
I don't see how this is really relative to the larger discussion at hand that was supposed to happen in the stream, but
it's just about informing people so that they understand what's happening. That way, that leads to more public organizing, and it leads to people realizing that, electoral politics will not be the only thing that saves you.
I mean, I think sometimes though, like you also, and sorry for interrupting, but like you like we just cast a lot of doubt and shame on people for doing things that we interpret as one way, but we might actually be misinterpreting what's happening. Like, for example, today I wanted to cover what was happening in Bolivia. I thought that would be an incredible stream to have, but I had a lot going on today and wasn't able to cover that. And who knows what happens tomorrow? It's like I think oftentimes on the left we assume the worst case scenario because we're so often fucked over by people who are in powerful positions like Jimmy is. And I don't know. I just think sometimes we shoot ourselves in the foot over on the left because of the positions that we're pigeonholed into as being powerless, as being people who are like committed to our beliefs.
You know, can I say something really quick? Say something again, because I like to jump into other circles and listen to what they're saying. Do you realize, all of you and anyone listening, that they're kind of saying the same thing on the right? Now, it might be in a different way, but I kind of did want to bring it back to this. Like, you realize that, like, they're also saying that they think that they're powerless. They think that it's the left, like, is, you know, they've taken over the country. So I'm noticing a common denominator, because you'll find that with me, I like to kind of bring it back to a pattern and take a step back, because it's hard for me to keep going with like more like the personality stuff, just because it's like I'm never going to convince anybody of what I think of another person, and I don't really care. So what I'm saying is that it's that's also being said on the right, and again, it's kind of by design, like the people aren't talking to each other. Like, you know, I noticed, especially on mainstream news on the right, they you know, I don't know if anyone even watching this cares what, you know, people on the right say, but at the same time, a lot of people, a lot of independent creators are like, we got to talk to libertarians and independents and even conservatives. Well, then, like, get to know some, like, bring some on, because I see a lot of people saying that, and they don't really have any indication of what, like, the right is generally talking about. Like, they're scared, you know, they were fear-mongered into thinking that the left is like Kamala Harris is like the most far left president, or vice president, probably soon to be president, but a joke. Okay. Anyway, I was just saying that pretty much they're confusing communism and socialism in their minds, and it's totalitarianism. And then on the left, you hear a lot of, you know, name calling to the right, which is like that they're all Nazis, they're all fascists. Well, no, I mean, sure, there are on both sides. There's bad people on all sides, but the common denominator is the oligarchy, the technocracy, that the bigger power. And so if you just keep falling for the same shit, which is like the duopoly and just the endless fighting, then we are going to keep devolving. I don't think that's going to happen. I might be, you know, I'm an optimist, but I'm a realist, and I don't want to see any more division, because we really do have so much more in common than we think. And just the way I channel that is through writing and just sharing information with people, and, you know, really just reminding people that free speech isn't something that you should take for granted, because shit can be taken away from you real quick.
I mean, it is.
I want to say, like, there's some people, because there's people in the chat that are like, oh, like, you're being too harsh on Jimmy and blah blah, like, we like, he can't talk about, like, these conspiracy theorists. There are people that are calling Jimmy a conspiracy theorist for, you know, calling out Russiagate and for the OPCW reports. Like, some of these things are, like, well documented and all, but again, I want to say there's people out there that serve certain roles. Like, Jimmy is not going to be like this super expert on, like, foreign policy and all that, but he's able to inform people at a level where, you know, someone who is just waking up to this stuff can easily understand. He exposes the mainstream media and, you know, the other people in the synthetic left, the things that people are more familiar with. So he serves a certain role, but sometimes it can become too repetitive, and he's not diving into enough, like,
have you ever considered maybe he just doesn't want to cover the things that you guys are griping about that he's not covering?
Yeah, he doesn't want to cover it, but that's the thing, like, why doesn't he want to cover it? Could it be that he might be afraid of getting his channel demonetized, or is he afraid that he might get hit a little too much?
But if he's gonna tell his audience and remind them frequently, and I know because I watch Jimmy Dore, if he's gonna frequently remind people of how anti-establishment he is, how he'll be the only one willing to say something, how, like, oh yeah, I'm the only one who'd be willing to challenge someone like Ro Khanna. If he's gonna go and say that stuff and paint himself as that guy, and, like, listen, I know he's a jagoff comedian too. I know he's open about that. But he's also painting himself up to be like the only person doing what he's doing. If he's gonna act like that, then walk the talk. like be more adversarial, go even harder. Like when you have like don't just have Whitney Webb on once, have her on multiple times and read her shit.
Yeah, I mean, you might not agree, but I don't know if it's griping. I have to, not griping. Just...
I mean,
yeah, I'm not.
at
I
this
want.
point,
I
it's
want
like
Jimmy to be.
He's had these people on his show before.
But
Do
then
you
look
want
at
him
who
to
he
have him
keeps
on like
bringing
every
on,
episode
though.
or like every other episode? How often should? Yeah, I mean, also it's like it's Jimmy's fucking show. It's not your show. It's not any of your shows. This is the same like problem I have with people who come into like my chat occasionally and say like, oh, like, you know, you're a sellout for not bringing Magnus, whatever his name is, on your show. And it's like, if you're so concerned about this, then maybe just go watch someone else who's going to bring him on, you know? I think like if you want to have Whitney on the internet a lot, if you want to have Whitney on your show a lot, then start a show and bring her on your show.
But that's kind of like telling. That's kind of like telling people.
Like anyone should.
That's kind of like telling people like you can't like critique this movie because you're not a director. You can't like critique this food because you're not a chef. Like the people want the best in these informers. Like they want people to be as informed as possible. So that's why they give some of these constructive criticisms. And I do want to say, like, again, I love Jimmy. I love what he does. These are just constructive criticisms that I want to see in him to improve.
Question someone's integrity because they don't bring someone on more than one time on their show?
I'm just asking Jimmy to expose his audience to the narrative that he claims that he's exposing to them. Like he's proclaiming that he's exposing his audience to these anti-establishment narratives. Like, okay, then do that full send, please, because we need Jimmy's audience to be able to see all the information, all the things that's happening, because it's the oligarchs' own words and own plans that need to be exposed, and that so few people are willing to read out to people. So I'm like, and like I said, I love Jimmy. I still watch his streams all the time. I think he's a hilarious guy. I love his live shows. Like I miss that shit so much. But I'm literally like asking him, and this isn't the first time I've asked him. I'm just like asking and damn near begging him to actually go full send with what he's proclaiming he's doing.
Again, like maybe he just doesn't agree with what you think a full exposing of the elite are.
I mean, yeah, to be objective, it may be. So then what is what I'm saying? Because like that might be true. So then do we like?
That might just be a disagreement between you guys and Jimmy or whoever commentator, you know?
Talking. This isn't like that combative. At least that's not how I see it. It's more just like a conversation, man. Like what I was getting at is that like, so that's where it ends as far as like, that's what Jimmy's going to cover. That's fine. But that is going to bother people who are passionate about certain subjects and not. That's all. I mean, we are kind of going in circles now because I see what you're saying. You're just like, well, maybe what you think of like something as coverage isn't coverage, but at the same time it's like he does kind of say he's the only one. But I don't know, because I'm gonna be honest, I don't think I've followed Jimmy Dore as long as you guys. And that's cool.
The thing is, yeah, like we don't know if he disagrees or not, but you know, we're this is stuff we're pointing out, like these are thoughts we've been having, and you know, we're putting it out there. Yeah, like some of these things, I don't know, this just has to be acknowledged. Like these are some critiques that some people have. It could be because he disagrees, but again, we don't know. It's just we're just pointing some of this stuff out.
Well, yeah, because we always want to be careful that, you know, we don't become like, we're all susceptible to like falling into that trap of just kind of going along with what everybody says, especially because we project things onto people. And then when they, you know what I mean? Like we want somebody to be like 100% transparent all the time. And when they're not, we kind of just gloss over it. So I think that's kind of the angle, but I don't know. It seems, I think there's an understanding here, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, propaganda brought up a good point. Jimmy for a long time knew about, you know, Chang's corruption, but he was silent about it for a while. So I guess that's what leads some people to think that maybe he knows more, but he's too afraid to say it. But again, it's just speculation. But yeah, it's just the thing where he says like he's the only one doing it, like he's the only one exposing the Syrian gas attacks, like not acknowledging Richard Medhurst or Vanessa Beeley or um, what who's the other female journalist, Glory, from Syria, who
Oh, Eva
Eva
Bartlett.
Bartlett.
She actually spent a lot of time in Palestine, and right now she's in Ukraine covering the conflict in the Donbass region. I think I said that right, but yeah, she's on the ground covering something. I think you froze up, Franco.
Really? Can you
Okay,
see
no,
me?
you didn't. I saw you blink.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just think that a lot of times we do shoot ourselves in the foot on the left, and I think this might maybe be an example of that. I think there's two different criticisms here, though. I think there's one criticism being that Jimmy takes. This is not me saying this, this is you guys saying this. That Jimmy oftentimes might take credit for things as being the only one to do something when there's a lot of other people who have less of a platform that are going harder in the paint. And then I think the other criticism is that he doesn't give enough coverage to issues that he covers occasionally. Is that a good like summary of like your guys' critiques?
Yeah. Yeah, and then again, I'm not trying to shoot each other ourselves in the foot. Like we're all on the same side. We know we're on the same side. It's just, I don't know, when you feel like your teammate might be slacking a little bit, you might let them know, hey, I think you can improve if you do a little bit of this, and then that can help us, win the game.
People
yeah,
you know what? I am gonna say something because this is really not like me usually, but you were saying that we're shooting ourselves in the foot. I agree because like you just look how like in the chat, like it's cool. Okay, say whatever you want. I literally was just saying I'm a free speech absolutist and I like other people's opinions, but like it's just kind of sad if you say one thing like this is what I was talking about before. Then oh my god, like look at the ego of those three. Like why is it a 3-on-1? I mean, I don't know. I have higher standards, I guess, for audiences as far as like getting it. It's the bigger picture, guys. It's not about fucking Jimmy Dore. What like this is what I meant. Like, why are you standing for people? It's weird. Like, just think for yourselves. Like, it's weird to me. But I guess that's just how
some
I
people
am.
are getting really offended by like our criticisms of Jimmy. Like, look, like we're not like out here. We're not like Sam Cedar fans here that are hating on Jimmy. Like, again, we're just giving some thoughts that we've had about him.
Franco,
like,
I was hurt just by the mere comical suggestion of that.
No, because some people are like we see it with a lot of people with big platforms. A lot of their fans are really sensitive to criticisms of like people that they listen to, like the Kyle stands or
yeah,
like,
I mean,
you see it on the other side too, like with Sam Cedar, like the Cedar.
That's why I love the Slow News Day chat so much. Like if there's like one little misstep in what me or Steve are saying, second I open up the Discord, like, hey yo, like I got this to show you, like here's a couple articles to go with that, and like, like I know I'm totally like derailing the conversation, but I can't say it enough how much I love our chats for that, because like the idea of having a connection with your audience and really fostering a community of like just like open discussion in and out is something that's like so amazing that you don't see in a lot of media. So yeah, that's really awesome. And like, yeah, Slow News Day chat and right. Franco chat. Your chat's all right, Franco, but Slow News Day chat is the best chat.
My chat's awesome. I learn a lot from my audience members. You guys are really smart. Before we close off, I do want to bring up again, the censorship that just happened on Patreon towards Whitney Webb, James Corbett, and Ryan Christian of The Last American Vagabond. Richard Medhurst is also getting censored by PayPal. What are your thoughts on that, guys? Do you think that more like whenever somebody gets censored, like what happened to HLM recently, where we all had him on our show? Do you think we need to do more of that when people get censored? Like we all just come together and like a bee swarm, just help each other out. We all go on each other's show and get the message out there, because if something happens to independent media, how are people going to know what's happening? What do you guys think?
Right. I don't know necessarily about, I mean, yeah, I think going on different shows is good and having each other's back is good. And also trying to be more creative in getting to the quote normies, or I don't even want to say normies, because honestly, it's just people that they're busy with other things, or maybe they're not, this isn't interesting to them, whatever. Like, honestly, a lot of people aren't, I think if more people knew about like kind of what was going on, and like my best friend just texted me. I mean, she's like, I never really knew about this like kind of underground like world of journalism. Like it's getting different ways, like getting this out to people so you can like focus on the bigger picture. I mean, but as far as specifics, yeah, of course, like what happened to HLM wasn't cool, and kind of saw that coming, and they, as far as I know, kind of were very, very conscious of what they put out, and how they said stuff, at least on a certain platform, because the algorithm is not, it's designed that way. So at the same time, you get reinstated, and then it's got to be really hard to then still continue doing what you do, knowing that you're still going to be on the chopping block. But the bigger point, I think, is that even when you do their dance, they'll still come for you. So that's all I've really got to say about it, honestly. I don't know the answers. You guys tell me.
I mean, I don't either.
Yeah.
That's why I love our chats, because they help with that. Yeah. I mean, yeah, echo everything Ali said, but I mean, it is nice to see communities come together when people are being censored and just have like, don't fuck with my friends type deal. Like, it was really nice to see people come together around, people like Vanessa and Whitney and T-Lab, and hopefully we can get the same thing for your demonetized videos, Jackson, and people have come together around Hard Lens as well. So just like keep doing that. And like I said, I mean, so I'm going to take this time to plug the Convo Couches Fuck Censorship event on March 17th. That starts at 2 p.m. at, I believe, CNN headquarters in DC. But before that, March 17th and March 18th, Action for Assange is going to be having Clovers for Assange themed events in DC, because about a year ago, a member of the anonymous community came up with the Clover as a way for Assange supporters to identify people. And we're trying to bring that into the real world via hijacking a holiday, which is going to be so much fun, because we'll be coming at the establishment, at the empire, with the same levels of absurdity of Julian's current situation, because it's so tragically absurd, the situation that he's in right now, where Belmarsh is literally holding his warm clothes in storage and refusing to give a legitimate response to the vast amounts of activists that are emailing and calling them daily, when he's being held in prison in the first place, despite the fact that the judge's extradition ruling in writing ordered for Julian Assange to be discharged from Belmarsh. Despite all of that, with the U.S. clown show of a prosecution planning to file meaningless appeal after meaningless appeal, and this continuing with the Biden-Harris administration, it's such an absurd situation that we will be coming with equal, if not more, levels of absurdity on March 17th and March 18th. And then it'll also be a way to raise attention and get a lot of recruitment, really, because April 11th will be the 2-year anniversary of Julian Assange being dragged out of the Ecuadorian embassy and into Belmarsh following the $4.2 billion loan to Ecuador from the IMF. So March 17th, 12 p.m., March 18th, 12 p.m. again in DC. March 18th is going to be in front of the DOJ. And March 17th, starting in front of Fox, ending at CNN, 2 p.m. 2 p.m. is when the fuck censorship protest starts, goes from CNN up towards Google, and we'll be banding together around that. It's organized by our great friends at the Convo Couch. And March 18th, noon, in front of the Department of Justice to, again, protest their further continuation of this prosecution, because I really think this case is kind of a starting point to help secure some agency for us, especially when this is really a post-partisan issue. And I'm very glad to see just the vast coalition of activists that have come together to show solidarity for Assange on an International Day of Action, really, because there's also going to be events in Boston, in Mexico City, in Amsterdam, probably in London, New Zealand, and all over the world. I'm forgetting the locations, but go to @CandlesForAssange on Twitter to see the master thread with all the events. So, yeah.
Free Assange, and also fuck censorship. I just want to read these super rays before we close off. And
I'm
thank you.
glad you call them super rays.
Are they not called that? Is that?
They are. No, they're called super rays. They're called super rays.
Yeah, and Anna Maris, thank you very much. Said being unable to handle criticism is insecurity. Remain curious and open-minded. Slay your inner demon who tries to keep you insulated. Guys, remember, we're all on the same team. Like the audience members out there, like it's just criticism, guys. Like we're not trying to like divide each other here. Like we have to be united in order to, successfully have a more representative government. That's a government of action that's fighting for working class families, as Caleb Maupin likes to say. Michka Key says, yo, love the conversation. Nobody's above criticism, currently unemployed, and $20,000 in student debt, or I'd give more. Fuck Joe Biden. Keep up the good work. Yeah, we're all going to do the best job we can in calling out Joe Biden and this horrible administration, because we all have, people that we know in our personal lives that think that we've accomplished world peace, but we haven't. We haven't accomplished world peace just because we got Trump out. The problem is still there. But yeah, thank you guys so much for coming on.
Thank you. You always have great, just great ideas. Yeah. I like how you doing things.
Thanks. Yeah. So you, Jackson, you want to leave a final message for everybody? Where can people find you? Where can people show support for The Dive?
Yeah, I'm on YouTube and Rockfin and Odyssey, and keep doing stuff and keep, doing my work. So thanks for having me on.
Yep. And Allie?
I'll let you guys know where you can find me. I'm on Chicago Corner right now. You can still find me there, and you can find me on my Substack. That's usually the easiest place. Substack or AllieAlexander.substack.
Totally forgot to promo the fact that I'm a co-host of Slow News Day, by the way. I remembered it last minute. I got you, Steve. At Slow News Day Show on Twitter, slownewsdayshow.com, and scoopgang.social on Mastodon. And yeah, discord.slownewsdayshow.com.
There you guys have it. Thank you so much for watching. Stay informed. And guys, I love you all. All right.
Love y'all.
Stay informed. Stay conscious. Take care, everybody.